And you brought up the name of our special guest clinician today and contributor to the panel, Eric Whitaker. And I have to say I'm fangirling just a little bit that we're here with you again, Eric. So Eric, when we met with you last week, you always have a way of speaking in a way that makes me think, wow, that was always in my heart, but I'd never put words to it. And last week, you put words to what has been in my heart quite a bit. So I wonder, would you share your thoughts with our guests today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I'm humbled and honored to be here with all these other panelists and to be with anybody involved with NCCO. I'm just such a big fan and advocate of what the organization is doing. Second, I had to smile when Tesla was saying about, we keep talking about how this is new, but I've been doing it for a while. That's true. So as you put in the chat, Lux Aurumque, my first virtual choir, we premiered in 2010. We began building in 2009, which when I say it out loud just seems absurd that this was 10 years ago. And when I first posted that, I couldn't have possibly imagined, well, I could have never imagined there would even be a second one. It was really just a one-off experiment to see, does it work? But how could I have ever seen that, okay, there will come a time when it will be one of the primary ways we have of keeping our little communities together. And by little communities, I mean our choirs. The thing is, and it's important for me to say this, that back in 2010, never once did I think to myself, I'm making another version of a choir, that this will one day replace choirs, or even that it's the same thing as a traditional choir. I've never thought of it that way at all. And the more I think about it, the more that I think actually the virtual choir is the antithesis. It's the exact opposite of what we all do, which is we get together in a room, we breathe together, and we sing in that room. Anybody now who has any experience making one of these virtual choirs know that, as Tesla was calling, making the sausage behind the scene, it's a nightmare. And for everyone involved, by the way, not just the people who have to put all this together, but for the singers as well. It's the oddest experience. You're alone in a room. At best, you're hearing other voices that are pre-recorded in your head so that you've got a sense of how all of this goes. There's no way you ever sound good, even if you're singing in your own shower, which is where I tried to record all of my virtual choir voice. But by the way, I've tried in almost every one of my virtual choirs to upload my own voice part so that I could be included as a singer. And every single one I threw out. They're terrible. It's like I hear all my flaws as a singer. I breathe in these terrible places. It's not the same experience. And one of the great sins, I think, of the virtual choir having become popular in the time of COVID is that administrators and politicians seem to think that it's an alternative to meeting together in person. I can't tell you how many messages I've received from administrators and politicians saying how beautiful that you've led the way on this, because now, even post-COVID, we won't need to meet together. We don't even have to offer choir as a 0 period option. We can just do it this way. We can do, and that also goes for bands and orchestras. I can't say this loudly enough that not only is it not an alternative option, it's not even the same genre. They're two totally, totally different things. And while I'm very proud of it, and I think it's very important that we're doing it, it will never replace what we do together, which has worked for thousands of years. And frankly, doesn't need any fixing. We just need to get on the other side of COVID. That's all it takes. That being said, I think there are some great virtues to the virtual choir, and I'd like to speak to those just for a moment. And all of us have touched on this in one way or another, which is that it maintains and even builds this profound sense of community. I've always thought that was the great virtue anyway of a traditional choir. Besides the music making and the exploration of humanity, it's just that it brings people together. And we know now that there's a physiological benefit, an actual physical benefit to singing together. You see all kinds of important transformations in the body, right? The lowering of stress hormones and this release of endorphins and oxytocin that causes a euphoric feeling and a sense of community and bonding. That those things not only happen in traditional choirs, somehow, some way, they also happen in a virtual choir. That singers who are alone in their own rooms and participate in a virtual choir somehow have an almost identical physiological response to the event. and that they feel part of something larger than themselves, which is essential. And they feel bonded to the choir and the people that they're making music with, however strange that is. I think that's unbelievably important, especially as I think what we're all trying to do is keep singers engaged and at part of our little communities until we get past all of this madness. The next thing is something a couple of people said, even Tesla was saying, is that I've seen time and time again that the virtual choir you can finally find the tech nerds in your choir and give them something to do. I can't tell you how many people have written to me saying, my high school or my college is making a virtual choir. How do I do this? I don't even know the first thing about apps and technology. By the way, neither do I. I'm somehow hailed as a tech guy. I'm okay with the tech, but I don't do any of the behind the scenes tech for the virtual choir. That's all people who are specialized in it. But my 14-year-old son, I'm pretty sure that if I said, okay, listen, just go on YouTube and in 2 days figure out how to make one of these things, boom, he'd know how to do it. And I think especially for all of you teachers out there who are thinking that you'd like to do one of these and you're just completely overwhelmed by the technology, you don't stand alone in that. And know that all the expertise you need is probably sitting right there in your choir. You'd be amazed at how proficient some of these young people are and how much they will blossom given the opportunity to be a part of it. One of the other great virtues I find for myself is that making our virtual choirs is an opportunity for people to lend their voice to the choir in a way that they never possibly could. So for instance, in the last virtual choir we did, Virtual Choir 6, we just released it, which by the way has 17,572 singers from 129 countries. Even saying those numbers out loud just sort of sends a chill down my body. We had, I think, it was 14 or 15 deaf signers, not singers, but people who were deaf or hard of hearing that joined as signers. We had at least half a dozen blind singers, and somebody from the community, a blind singer who wanted to join, made a Braille version of the music, uploaded it so that blind singers could download it and then print it out in a Braille machine. They could be included. One of my favorite groups to be included is cystic fibrosis sufferers, who, it's a terrible disease that affects lung capacity and also the immune system. And because of the unique bacterial footprint that they all share, cystic fibrosis sufferers can never be in the same room with another cystic fibrosis singer. So literally the only way for them to join a choir together is virtually. I find that incredibly beautiful. Virtual choirs too, if you make them outside your community, the way we do, and by community I mean your own personal choir, immediately eliminates age barriers. This last virtual choir we had singers as young as 5 and as old as 80. To me is extraordinary. I find there are very few art forms or even community events that can bring together that range of ages. And then there's even the benefit of, it starts erasing political borders. Over the years, we've had singers from Iran and Iraq, from Pakistan and India, from Jordan, Egypt, Israel, from political adversaries, that the singers are just coming together to be part of something larger than themselves. We even had early on a young man from Cuba who desperately wanted to join, but because of government regulations was unable to upload a video larger than 1 meg through his email account. So we got our tech people together with him and taught him how to split it into 26 little pieces. He sent it all to us. We stitched them together. Cuba became part of the virtual choir. Finally, what I'd like to say, and this is on a very personal note as a composer, one of the things that I think these virtual choirs do is in that all of the conductors that I've seen have been scrambling to try to find a way to keep the community engaged and to somehow to continue making music, is that it's given this newfound focus on the music and especially the poetry that everyone is singing. Because you're looking to fill up time and you can't really do it rehearsing the music itself, people are now with a magnifying glass going through the works themselves. And as a composer, I can't tell you how thrilling this is. Not so much because people are looking at my music or other music, but because they're looking at the poetry. I know almost every conductor wishes they had more time during the year to just, well, let's just take 2 hours and not worry about the music at all and rehearse. Let's just sit and explore the poetry. But now for the first time virtually, you can really do this. And for me, that's where the juice is. That's where the gold is. I think what separates our art form from all other art forms is that we combine music and the word. And I have this half-baked theory that because of that, we're engaging, it's a whole brain experience. It's truly transformative. And I think now the virtual choirs and these virtual communities give us the chance for the first time to kind of take a breath, sit back, and really dive deep into what these pieces are and what they mean to us and how they can change us. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Very inspiring. We appreciate you speaking with us and taking time. We'll have another moment. We'll get back around. I'm going to shoot back to Nicole Aldrich. Nicole and our committee, which was originally formed to look at choral ensembles in the collegiate curriculum, which will be providing data, including the resources that Eric was talking about for the healthful benefits, both mental, physical, and emotional for participants in choral ensembles. So we'll have that at the next national gathering. Round two, though, Nicole, you talked at times about specialized uses that you're thinking about for this fall, now that you had the same effect that many of us had in the spring of, I just don't know what to do or where to enter. We've all had the summer to begin to acquaint ourselves with virtual choirs and think what an important tool it can be. And you had some ideas for specialized uses of virtual choir. So I wonder if you would share with us about that.
Sure, thanks, Joey. On my mind a lot has been something that Eric just mentioned, which is that that we have an opportunity to dig into music more than we used to. You know, I think there was a point where I thought that virtual choirs were really about the product, you know, because ultimately what everybody sees and rejoices in is that final video, you know, but I'm actually realizing that going virtual next semester takes a lot of the pressure off of me about product. I teach at a STEM school. There are almost no music majors in my choirs, even my advanced choir. In my lower level choir, we have people who've never done choir before in their lives, or people who sang when they were Girl Scouts in 8th grade and haven't done it since, people who play piano but don't sing, all of that. International students, it's a great place and I love teaching there, but you know, honestly, there are times when I go, okay, I got to come up with a 75-minute concert by the end of November, and half of this choir can't read music. You know, how do I do this? And so, you know, that limits to a certain extent the music that I can do with them, because I want to make sure we're going to be successful. You know, and I want to make sure that I'm getting the repertoire that I feel like they need, but we also want them to have a good experience. So what I'm really looking forward to with virtual teaching this fall is the opportunity to dig into little sections of pieces. You know, I can introduce my students to composers whose music is really quite difficult. And we wouldn't be able to do the whole piece, but we can do a little section of it and really dig in. You know, the Institute for Composer Diversity has such a wonderful database and of composers I don't know, you know, and I can get to know them now and share it with my students. We can really explore and put together a 50-second virtual choir video of the little bit that we've done. There are also some opportunities to include more of the community, more of the greater St. Louis community, which is something my whole university is very interested in now. Because we're all, I mean, as Eric was saying, you know, you can really bring in a whole lot of people from a lot of different walks of life to participate in this. And it's just really exciting.
It is an exciting time. I don't know that we all felt that way initially, but it is an exciting time. And part of the excitement of it is that we're finding the way that it can be helpful in our artistic goals and in our educational goals, but it's also helpful in helping